what they say, Italy's the land of beauty, history, and endless pasta plates, but it's also the land where it's easy to make mistakes. And after 2 decades of traveling around this country, every nook and every cranny, believe me, I've made my share of mistakes, and I'm here to save you from making the same ones. And stick around, because one of the regrets I want to share with you is one of the most easiest ones to avoid. Okay, let's jump into Italy regrets. Top 7 travel mistakes from a local. And believe me, these are the ones you'll want to avoid. Visiting Rome, Florence, or those popular Italian cities in the peak summer months. It's like trying to enjoy fine wine at a frat party. It's overcrowded and you can't think straight. My advice to you, well, think when you want to travel and plan accordingly to avoid the big crowds. Here's my story. I can remember back in the day, I didn't live in Florence at the time. I lived up around Lake Como near Milan. My sister and my brother-in-law came and visited me, and we made a trip down to Florence in August, peak summer month. I remember it was so hot. I was walking in the shadows of the buildings trying to avoid the heat, just sweating, and I already sweat a lot, just sweating and not enjoying our visit to what's a beautiful city. And that can be the same for Rome, also for those hot spots like the Amalfi Coast or Cinque Terre. If it's overcrowded, you're not going to enjoy the experience that you should be enjoying when you're coming here to Italy. So what do the experts recommend? Well, visit in the shoulder months. I'm talking about March, April, maybe a little bit of May, and then in the autumn, we're looking at September, October. You're gonna find a lot less crowds and better prices, and you're gonna be able to move around and really savor that Italian experience that you're paying the big airline ticket to get here and enjoy. I regret trying to pack in too many cities into one trip. You know what they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you shouldn't try to visit it that way either. Don't try to squeeze in 5 big cities into one trip like you're trying to set a world record. I made the same mistake. And I don't know what it is with the people coming from the United States, the Americans. They seem guilty of this more than the others. I get it. You have like a 5-7 day vacation, so you don't have much time, and you want to visit those big cities that you've always read about. And so you try to squeeze in all those towns, all those cities, all those places into one trip. But doing so, you end up rushing around and you don't really savor the moments, savor the places, and soak it all in. So what I recommend for you to do is when you're traveling, if you only have 1 week, well, maybe only consider visiting 2, possibly 3 of those places. And when you're there, you'll have more time to sit down at a cafe, at a bar, enjoy a coffee, enjoy a spritz, and read about the place, meet some locals. So you're there, you're relaxed, you're taking a big deep breath, and you're soaking in all of the goodness of Italy. I know this runs contrary to what I just said before, but I regret spending too much time at the Amalfi Coast, Lake Como, and Cinque Terre. These places are spectacular. Don't get me wrong. You get photos there, they're stunning. All those places set along the water, so beautiful. But I find them too overcrowded and too closed in. There's nowhere to move, and you really feel the amount of tourists there. Instead, I like to go to places like Sicily, Puglia, Umbria, Tuscany, these regions where you can visit different towns and you can move around in 360 degrees, and you feel that you have a lot more freedom even if they have the same amount of tourists. Which brings me to today's sub-regret. Here, come with me, let's sit down. It's a little bit of a confession. I regret not going to Puglia and doing a 2-week trip sooner than I did. Exploring the coastline there in that region in the south of Italy, hitting up towns like Ostuni, going to Alberobello, popping over to Basilicata to see Matera. It's breathtaking, stunning, and not too many tourists. I regret not doing a 5-day trip up in the Dolomites, hiking, exploring those famous UNESCO mountains. And I also regret not exploring deeper the region of Umbria with towns like Assisi, Trevi and the capital of Perugia, I find that going to these places, you're gonna get much more authentic Italian experiences that you're looking for when you're coming here to Italy. Cold, hard cash. I regret not having enough cash on hand in my visits to Italy when I came over, not already having it when I arrived here in the country, because when you get here, you're gonna find, even though places are supposed to all take credit cards, they don't. And I'm talking about those small newspaper stands, or maybe a little small gelateria you see in that little village where you want to get, you know, some chocolate and strawberry gelato. And I don't blame you. This is the birthplace of good ice cream. So make sure you have some cash. And those nasty city taxes that they put on your hotel stay, I hate them. Also, if you want to drop down a tip somewhere, which you don't have to do, I don't recommend it, but if you do, you're going to want to have some coins or some Euro cash bills on hand. Don't ask to tip with your credit card. Now, credit cards will get you a long way, almost all the way you need to go in Italy, but you're gonna need to have cash. Now, what does Uncle Gregor recommend to you? Well, what I would have done in some of my first trips that I now regret is just going to that local bank branch back at home and pulling out some Euro bills. It's a huge currency. It's not like the lira or the franc in France back in the days. It's widely known around the world, and you can get it at your bank there, the big bank branch at your home, and then you have Euro on hand when you come here. I recommend 250 to 500 Euro cash. That way, it's one less thing you have to do when you arrive at the airport, jet lagged and disoriented. I regret not doing it all by train. Yeah, taking the train everywhere in Italy is the way to go. I remember my first trip here. I flew into Malpensa, up at Milan, rented a car, my first time driving in Europe, drove from Malpensa up to Como, the famous Lake Como. I always wanted to see it. Well, when I got there, I had a hotel that wasn't right in the center. It was down a little road. So the next morning when I got up and I wanted to go to the shores of the lake, I had to walk into the center because driving in there would have been too stressful. And in Italy, it's hard to find parking. So I walked in, explored a little bit, walked back out. It wasted a lot of my time, and frankly, it wasn't very smart. And in the rest of that trip too, I drove around exploring. It was fun driving in Italy, my first trip to Europe, but it was also a lot of stress and a lot of unneeded stress. What I found over the years is that the trains are great. It's a great way to get out and explore Italy, and they'll take you everywhere, almost everywhere. And yeah, there are strikes and delays sometimes, well, a lot, but it's stress-free travel. You get on there, you can take a coffee or a sandwich on board, or on those longer haul, high-speed trains, they get a dining car. Just go sit down, order some food, and watch the countryside zip by. Okay, there is a little sub-regret caveat to this. I wish I had rented a Vespa sooner in my trips to Italy. Getting out there on a week, 3-day wine trip. I did it with my sister. We traveled for 3 days around the Tuscan countryside, visited some vineyards, bought bottles of wine, put them in our bags, strapped onto the back of the Vespa. We had a hell of a time. And doing so, renting a Vespa, recently I heard about some Germans that rented a Vespa for 2 weeks and just explored different parts of Italy. It's a great idea. But when you're more experienced on a second or third trip to Italy maybe, also yes, this goes against what I said initially by taking the train, but you do want to have a car if you want to get out there in those vineyards and explore, say, those vineyards of Tuscany, Piedmont, Umbria. You can get out there in those little hillside towns, drive through the country lanes, stay overnight in a little hotel there, drink plenty of wine, and just enjoy the experience. So there's a lot of transportation options. Just consider the train. Now, stick with me. We'll get to that one big regret you don't want to make, but you can easily avoid it. I regret waiting in lines at those overhyped food places, waiting 2 hours for a slice of pizza, unless it's been blessed by the Pope himself. Non grazie. Instead, head down the corner. You're going to find a much more authentic experience and probably better food as well. These places pop up on social media, Instagram, and yeah, sure, they're probably good, but do you want to spend 3 to 4 hours of your precious time here in Italy waiting in line for that famous piece of pizza or sandwich that you've seen on Instagram, social media? Maybe not. What I suggest is walk a few blocks out of the city center, maybe ask some locals for that authentic place. Now, I know Naples has this place called Cerbillo for its fried pizza. Florence has this famous sandwich shop, Antico Venaio. But really, those places, you're gonna have to wait in line, and you're gonna find, if you just head down the block, you're gonna find a similar place with the same quality food and less tourists at less money as well. Now, if you have time on your vacation and you wanna hit those famous spots and sample them for yourself, I don't blame you, I've been to them. You can do it. You're gonna have to spend a couple of hours waiting in line, but I've warned you. Oh, what's that big regret I've been telling you about? Well, okay, let's get to it. Just please, if you're liking this video, if you've enjoyed all the content so far, hit the like button down below. That helps me out a lot. Also helps me out a lot if you subscribe. I know a lot of you aren't yet subscribed, so do me a favor, if you're enjoying the video and want to get all the videos right when they're released, well, click that subscribe button down below. Also helps get my channel out to all those other food and travel lovers like ourselves. Now the big one, what's the big regret? Well, I regret not staying in Italy longer, not making a longer trip. Ending your Italian vacation early is like stopping a Netflix series before the final episode. Why on earth would you want to do that to yourself? You want to spend more time enjoying the Tuscany countryside. You want to spend more time enjoying those little side streets and little restaurants in Rome. Soak it all in. Really, 5-7 days is never enough. You want to do more, and trust me, when you're back at home in the office, you're gonna think, why didn't I just stay longer? I mean, an 8 to 12 hour flight just to get there, and then another 8 to 12 hour flight to get back. Well, you should just add on a few extra days and you're gonna be happy you did so in the end. In Italian, they have a phrase called dolce far niente. That means the joy of doing nothing. Just sitting in a piazza, sipping an espresso, maybe having a glass of wine or a little bite to eat, and people watching, relaxing, taking a big deep breath, and yes, enjoying every moment of your vacation, and even adding to the moment by not shutting it off early. I remember after my first vacation, it was only 5 days and I was hooked. I wanted to come back. After 3 months, I was here in Italy again. So trust me, regret, you'll have it if you don't stay longer. What about those scams? What do you avoid when you're out and about? Which ones? Well, I made a whole nother video on that. Watch it here next.